Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Depressed Dior, and this is Langrisser Mobile Apex Season 13. Alright, those that watched the video on Thursday, or last Thursday, I got some new characters. Connie here is 6 stars. Everything, her casting enchants are all maxed out except for Accessory, which I think is at like level 2 right now. And then we have Grinshiel here, who is at 5 stars, and she will be 6 stars in about 10 or so days, plus around that, like 2 weeks, just about. And she doesn't have accessories maxed out yet, and she doesn't have her. I think like one of her weapons is like 1 level short of being maxed out. Because oddly enough, I ran out of SRs and R materials. I believe I talked about in the previous video what I was going to remove. I think originally I was saying I was going to replace Sophia and Christiane. Thinking about it, and looking at the box and the factions and stuff like that, I decided to go ahead and keep Sophia, and I did go ahead and drop Girl in the Shell. I really like using Girl in the Shell because she's really entertaining and has a lot of randomness to her that's pretty fun to play around with. But with no Christiane means there's no Princess faction buff, and my options for buffing her will become more limited. Obviously, I think I believe some people commented mentioning that with the way the box is now set up and seeing all the healers, that they may focus Lightbringer as a possible first ban, in which case I will lose my main guard. But that's kind of the intention. Where if they ban Lightbringer, I'll just grab Grinshiel, who can guard against physical. Obviously, guarding against magic is an issue, but most of our opponents tend to be physical now. A lot of them are. And those that do bring magic usually bring them for AoE. So it's not usually too bad. I mean, with the exception of like a Lucretia here and there, I was kind of okay with that. Essentially, it just changes how it changes from a tank push to more of a more aggressive style box. Because then I'll have, strategic faction to play around with, and then I can start grabbing those characters instead. In any case, with all that said and done, I will probably be dropping Sophia next month and replacing her with Agnes, who's not really a complete full-fledged healer, but she does the job, and she has access to some fancy attack spells that are pretty useful. Anyway, enough rambling. So we're going up against Zafrasan, which the name sounds familiar, but I couldn't find any recent logs where I actually battled him. But what better way to test this box than against a box I hate with a passion? It has pretty much a lot of the things I dislike. It has, is that Kruger? No, that's not Kruger. That's Vincent. Vincent, Clotaire, Wedham, old, I guess young Ares, old Ares. Yeah, a lot of stuff here it's about rushing and doing a mass amount of AoE. There's also some really strong single target strikers as well. So this is going to be quite the test. My opponent immediately banned Rosenseal, which means they're probably going to go AoE. I considered grabbing a healer and possibly risking going no tanks, but while AoEs are definitely a pain, I don't want to end up in a trade war against their single targets. So with that, I do go ahead and first I ban Clotaire because he's going to be a problem, and grab Lightbringer. Clotaire is a huge issue mainly because not only does he do a lot, he can cover a lot of ground, do a ton of damage, do a ton of fixed damage, reduce your healing, and negate self-resing. So he's just an all-in-one package that's just really bad against this box. Generally, the counters, of course, is using characters like Elma and Rosenseal, but usually my opponent, if they intend on using Clotaire, they're going to ban those characters. And as predicted, bans both Elma and Liana, so down to 1 healer. Or 1 primary healer. Grabs Ares as a first pick, so I was like, okay, that's annoying. I go ahead and get rid of Vincent immediately. I also get rid of Sword and Light and Shadow. Sword and Light and Shadow could, of course, teleport next to anyone that happens to rush ahead, and then immediately, hit me with an AoE that does tons of damage and negate buffing and all that nonsense. I go ahead and grab Sophia because I need a primary healer. They start going ahead and knocking out my DPS at this point. They take is that Lana? Luna. They take Luna really early, and Luna's mobility bonuses generally only apply to ground units, though my opponent can do some cheeky things by just attaching ground troops to flying heroes to make up for it. In any case, this kind of forces me to focus mostly physical. At this point, I go ahead and get rid of Wedham, get rid of Sherry. The biggest concern is debuffs. Anything that can stun is going to be really bad. And then, of course, anything that just does a lot of debuffs in general, I just need to mitigate as much as possible. I go ahead and grab Marielle to get some extra healing. I was thinking about getting Kyura, but like I mentioned before, Luna is here, so the amount of magic damage is significantly reduced. Goes with SP Elwyn. At this point, I start banning their primary strikers. I go ahead and grab Grinshield. Grinshield has a lot of mobility, and she's pretty good at single target, and she's bulky as well. So I'm hoping to do things with that. The other thing, of course, is it gives me strategic faction buffer, which means now I can use Connie and Silvaria without much issue, or I could have possibly used Auden Kelmo if they didn't ban her. So grabs a Leon. I do not look forward to SP Leon in the future. At this point, I go ahead and get rid of any additional AoE. Out of all of this, I didn't want to deal with any more AoE. So with that, I was completely fine with dealing with a Rose. Don't remember her name. It's not Rosen Seal. Oh well, we'll know in a second. And they don't really. I mean, Akaya could have definitely made their mobility go to the absolute extreme, but apparently my opponent was not interested in that. Rosalia, that's her name. Alright, so yeah, like I talked about earlier, so this Ares actually has Heaven's Guard, which I'm not sure why they went... Oh, it does... Okay, it does get bonus attack, yeah. I was getting that mixed up with... I was getting them mixed up with Templar Guards. Anyway, standard kit Elwyn with unicorns. Luna has... Yeah, this is a standard kit Luna with with Princess faction buff, which would apply to her and Rosalia. Rosalia did bring Chivalry and Silver Spear? This Rosalia does not have a 3C. Yeah, there's no 3C here. Okay. Leon here, Legion, Chivalry, and Blue Dragon Strike. And then standard areas that's focused on AoE. Now, one thing to note is the ground troops actually do hinder a little bit because there is river tiles or swamp tiles in the middle. So I actually get a little bit more breathing room than I expected. With that being said, we have Joa here. So this will be show off Joa here. He's got his stealth. He's got his pulse shot. That oh, it actually reduces mobility. That's kind of neat. It's different from Connie's. And then the rest is just some additional fixed damage when they attack. All right, and then I went with the 4 range attack with Connie here, roundabout, and her 3C. And went with Elven Cavalry Archers just for the additional mobility and to stick with. There's a lot of flyers here, and I expected a lot of flying troops, so doubling up on Archers was fine. Standard Sophia Shrine Maidens with Rewind and 3C. Lightbringer, I did bring Strength in. I actually forgot to swap it, but to be honest, there's not really much to swap it to. So I went with Phalanxes because I was expecting... out of every troop type that was available, I was not expecting any... I wasn't expecting infantry. There's occasionally the rare Ares that is that's an infantry, not a flyer, but that is not the case in this situation. Grand Shield here, I went with Cold Shield, 3C, and Air Slash, and then Marielle standard kit with Holy Guard mages. So, as mentioned, the big thing here is measuring distance. So this Leon here can possibly go 1, skip that tile, 2, 3 to here. Ares can he can go another 4 tiles in a line, but with this stuff in the way, it'll actually hinder him. So I'm not too worried about him at the moment. Rosalia can go Chivalry to here, and then that's about it. So it's not too bad at the moment, but we do have Luna here. So eventually there'll be a lot more mobility. And then Elwyn here can go 1, 2, 3, 4. So his attack range is to here. Alright, so for right now I kind of just spread out. I go into the forest tiles just to get some additional defense from Ariel. Alright, so opening right off the bat with the faction buff with 3C. So now their mobility is much more flexible. So with this, Rosalia can go 1, 2, 3. I believe this is within 2 rings. So she can then throw her sword and then reach us. So at this point, she can actually reach Marielle. And with no buffs, I think she can actually possibly die from being hit by Rosalia. It's hard to say. Elwyn here can now go 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way to there. So definitely can say hello at this point. And then Leon can go to here and only go 1, 2, 3 to here. This here is a stone pillar, not a mountain. So you can't actually go through it unless you're flyers. And then for Ares, he can get to here. This will soak up some movement, and then he actually can't reach anything, even with this special annoying ability. So with this additional knowledge, I'm actually pretty safe. So I go ahead and shift down to go ahead and get guard coverage and to get my buffs up. Also to get stacks up so I can soak the impending dispels that are coming my way. And then right off the bat, here comes Chivalry. And my opponent paused here for a bit because, yeah, he can't reach anything. This literally does nothing. He can fall back to here, which will be just out of range. Yeah, just be out of range of Joey there. But I could go to here and then finish him off with Gren Shield if I wanted to be really aggressive. But wasting the Chivalry here is pretty costly, and there's no follow-up that can really... The only follow-up is attacking down here to the south. So yeah, my opponent gives up. Like I mentioned before, he could have fallen back, and he fell back right out of the match. So as you can see, this new box is completely working just fine, and it is completely unbeatable now. Alright, so I was informed that that match doesn't count, so I decided to go ahead and do another. You're welcome. Alright, so this match is this box is a bit more interesting. We're going up against Callista. You can see a Tiaras here, a Ashamir. We got Werner. Don't see Tensei Jessica too often, so yeah. This box has 3 tanks. I think it's, yeah, 3 tanks and 3 healers. Yeah, 3 tanks. Oh yeah, SP Freya's here too. I go ahead and ban Epsilon, because I don't want to deal with the guard bypassing nonsense. My opponent bans a Rosen Seal, which against this box is not a big deal. Takes Rosen Seal herself. At this point, I go ahead and get rid of the tank that can negate crits, and go ahead and get rid of Werner, because he can also bypass guard. And at this point, I go ahead and grab Lightbringer. My opponent decides to go ahead and start banning some, well, pretty much my primary DPS and my assassin. Grabs Christiane as the tank. So at this point, I go ahead and start getting rid of some annoying Princess faction characters. And I actually go ahead and grab a healer at this point. I had 3 healers to spare, but I wanted to go ahead and grab Liana just to see if my opponent will know what I'm about to do. And the answer is yes. My opponent realizes letting me have Liana and Sylvaria as player 2 is a very bad idea. So they ban Sylvaria, ban Lucretia there. And they grab Rashomir. So I was like, alright. Go ahead and get rid of Weta, get rid of Tensei Jessica to deal with the teleports. And I go ahead and grab Grin Shield here. Now the risk here is my opponent could grab a second tank, which would make Grin Shield a little harder to use. My opponent went ahead and just went after some of my strategic faction characters, and went ahead and grabbed Toa. So Toa could only be faction buffed by Freya, and a lot of her 3C kit it relies on her having a faction buff, which is a bit annoying. I think she might be able to copy a faction buff, but I'm not entirely certain. So an old trick that you can do with Toa was to stack a bunch of yeah, the combination you can do with her is you go Christiane with Toa. You put on the little blossom thing on Toa that can do the little extra AoE, and you do that on top of her own AoEs, and give her a bunch of stuff that does additional fixed damage, like a blood equivalent of like a bloodthirster or something along those lines, and then just use that to do a bunch of extra damage through just passive AoEs, which is probably the reason why my opponent banned Rosenseal early. But with the amount of healers I have, it shouldn't be that big of an issue. So I go ahead and ban their remaining tanks. That way I can fully utilize Grinshield. I also grab Marielle. And they go ahead and get rid of the rest of my strategic faction characters and leave me with 2 healers. So at this point, I actually run out of time. I was like, do I really need to grab Elma? Because there's not really status effects I really need to worry about. And eventually I ran out of time and it automatically gave me Sophia, but I think I was going to go ahead and grab her anyway. And then my opponent also took a second healer, grabbing TRS. Alright, so this Christiane went with Angels, his Cavalry, and then Standard Kit with 3C. Ashamir here went 3C, her Pull and Move and Act Again ability, and then went with Demolish. Demolish is not really that big of a threat, but I guess it can soften up my non-light bringers. But she's not going to be dispelling guard anytime soon. TRS went with her 3C and Holy Missile, so additional dispelling there. This Rosenseal actually brought Ice Dragon Breath, which is actually a little dangerous because I am not immune to mobility down. But I also have multiple characters that can get rid of it. Marielle can get rid of it with her own spell. Sophia can get rid of it with her spells. And Leona can literally do it through her talent. So it's not that big of a deal. And then Toa here, 3C, her little aura move again thing. And then she got Sword Breath. So yeah, I think she was planning on doing a bunch of AoE damage. But she doesn't have access to a faction buff directly. In fact, the only buff that can really happen is TRS with her exclusive. So that's about it. As for over here, everything here is standard kit, except for, well, I'll go Leona here, Act Again with 3C, Shrine Maidens, and then Grinshield here, same kit as before. Alright? So yeah, with this, I was like, alright, I'm just going to take the center. Like, I think the only danger here is TRS's 3C and these two doing a bunch of damage, specifically Ashamir, because she does a bunch of magic damage. Which is why I went with Templar Knights, is just to reduce is to give myself better magic defense. So yeah, my opponent went ahead and just opted to go ahead and start getting rid of Effluxant stacks, or what they're called. And I just went aggressive here. I'm just going to take the center. Technically, this tank can move a lot faster than me, so they could beat me to it if they were really feeling like it. And yeah, my opponent decided to just stay right there. I mean, right now guard is down, so they have to stay in a plus formation. The plus formation is really the only way to counter Grinshield, by the way, because then you can't actually get the sword or the shield out within range to disable guard. But that's okay. I have Marielle, so it doesn't matter. Also, the dance partner was something I was thrown off by a little bit. I was 100% expecting the dance partner to be like Toa or something, just to give like just the raw buffs. But the dance partner actually is Christiane, which I mean, it does give buffs to Christiane, but I'm pretty sure Toa needs it more than Christiane at this point. Alright, so like I said, I'm being really aggressive here. The center is literally right here in these 6 tiles. I have Marielle within guard range. The healers are completely out of range. Toa can go to here and then go all the way to here and actually attack Grinshield right now. And right now I don't have her HP bubble, but I am in forest terrain, I'm at full HP, I do have last rites, and I'm immune to fixed damage. And I do have the ability to... Yeah, I have... Yeah, I'm immune to fixed damage. That's all we really need to know. So you can't break last rites. So I am confident that I can tank this. One thing to note about these fancy 3C faction buffs that activate automatically. The big issue about them is if you don't have they have specific triggers afterwards that reapply them. And if you can't get those triggers, you can eventually run out of time, and those buffs will just run out. Grinshields is a strategic faction character, has to get a kill, and that will refresh the buff for all the strategic faction characters. She's the only strategic faction character here, so she has to get the kill to refresh her buffs. So that's just something to note. Right now my opponent's been hanging back a lot, and it's possible my opponent can try to just stall out my buffs, or just gradually whittle them down with Demolish and things like that. I do have Strengthen, so I can reapply at least some of the buffs to Grinshield if necessary, but it is something to note. My opponent decides to be hang back, so I was like, alright. So I am within the danger zone, so I did get the bubble here to soak some hits. I did get hit with the Holy Missile. It gets rid of one stack of the shield, or the Mirror Light, so it doesn't do anything. I go ahead and heal to full because I have nothing else to do right now as I move into position. The crystal stacks don't really matter. I don't really apply that many debuffs. Alright, so 30% terrain bonus here. I'm gonna get hit with 3C here. Did some fixed damage at the beginning of it. Took some damage here, and I think it does another it does another round of fixed damage at the end. So, a bit painful, but there's no follow-up, so I can just heal. Toa does have... oh, I guess one thing to note is I did... she did have this, which increases damage from TR's exclusive, so that's with plus 30% damage as well. So we already know that she by herself can't actually get kill. One thing to note about Toa right now, she did get a passive Tenya buff that did give her attack, or gave her strengthen essentially. Alright. So getting hit with Demolish does some damage, nothing too serious. Did dispel some buffs, which was annoying. But didn't get rid of anything important. Did get rid of the attack buff on Liana, but she doesn't really need it. The only thing that's holding it did soften up Marielle, and I definitely know that Marielle with less HP tends to lose a lot of kill potential. So with that in mind, yeah, my opponent's just hanging back as much as possible. I go ahead and do 3C just to heal everyone up and reapply any buffs that were missing. So we go ahead and shift around. So yeah, the reason why I was mentioning the thing about Marielle is the plan here is I can actually go to here, do 3C, which will be guarded. It would have been guarded even over here. Which will make it so her next attack bypasses guard, and then her other attack gives her 2 steps of mobility afterwards, so she can actually move back to here and stay within guard range. So the idea would be to hit Christiane for some damage, dispel some of her buffs, and then just kill Tiaris, possibly. So I dispel 3 buffs here. She does have First Strike. She got all of her Effulgence stacks gotten rid of. But even with the First Strike, I kill all of her troops. Also, one of the Tenya buffs I got gave me some extra healing, so that helped out a lot. So 100% HP. Not even close. Yep, just completely kill her, heal back to full, and move back. So get hit with some more AoE. It doesn't really do damage, but it does negate my mobility. Losing 2 mobility is not that big of a deal for Grinshield here. Actually, I think I lost only 1. So go ahead and throw out the shield, negate guard completely. I didn't get First Strike here because Toa was a flyer. Now, one thing to note was I didn't actually need the disable guard, but I also did it because this cold shield does debuff stuff. It also made it so it cycled. It also made it so Toa had reduced mobility, which of course will trigger her talent because I did have only 4 mobility versus 5. But But out of the 3 buffs I dispelled, I did get rid of the guard one. So her guard range is only 1. Now it's 0 because of the cold shield. And all their units have already passed, so I'm able to just kind of do whatever I want. I go ahead and move in, do Discipline for some extra damage. Again, guards disabled because of cold shield. This also puts Grin Shield back into guard range. Also, since I did get killed with Grin Shield, it reapplied the faction buff. So yeah, really neat. Yeah, literally my opponent didn't have an answer for any of it. Toa, and even if I hadn't gotten kills, I had the center, and they didn't have a way of killing my troops at that point. The only tricksy thing they had was they had the Frost Dragon Breath, but it's dispellable. So literally, if I wanted to, I could have just used Liana to get rid of it if I was that concerned about losing guard for that round. But once I killed all their DPS, there was nothing to actually capitalize on it. Hey, Mariel did more damage to the Grin Shield. Good for her. So there you go. A slightly more significant win there. But yeah, so far so good. Our win rate's going back up. We're up to 66%. Our ranking's also going up. So we'll definitely be getting at least the 512 reward probably at the end of the season. For the most part, there's not too much to look forward to. Like I said, in a month there'll be some more characters, but by that time, there'll only be like a week or 2 left of the point race. So I'm probably not going to go too hard on those characters since I'm going to have more time to actually get them caught up and then prepare for Awakener. And Awakener's going to be fun for Season 14, that's for sure. But until then, I am the Depressed Eater. This is Langrisser Mobile Apex Season 13. I'll see you guys later.